Yeah, I'm ready.
Oh, you need the mic on?
Yeah, oh, it's on. I'd like to call the meeting to order, please.
Before I have to go through the room.
Are there any special attentions from the council or from the administration? Councilwoman DeFrances, you have the floor. Teresa, can you give Councilwoman the microphone working?
Thank you. This past week, Joanne Damiano Ingram died. She was a person who was born and raised in Kenner, a lovely, lovely person. Many of you know her, who worked for Code. She's leaving behind a husband and daughter and a faithful yellow lab, and everyone affectionately called her JoJo. She will be missed. Please keep her and all of her family in your prayers. Thank you.
Councilman Reyno, would you please lead us in prayer?
Let us bow our heads and remember that we are in the presence of the Lord. Jesus, the light of the world, as we celebrate your birth this Christmas, may we begin to see the world in the light of the understanding you give us. As you chose the lowly, the outcasts, and the poor to receive the greatest news of the world had ever known, so may we worship you in meekness of heart. May we also remember our brothers and sisters less fortunate than ourselves in this season of giving. In your holy name we pray, amen.
Amen. Councilwoman Hand, would you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Chairman, you have a quorum this evening. In accordance with Council Resolution Number B14550, please be advised that all cellular telephones, pagers, beepers, and other devices of this nature must be deactivated or silenced throughout the council meeting. Under the consent agenda this evening, we have item 1, approval of minutes, the council meeting of December 7, 2017. Item 2 is approval of alcoholic beverage permit applications. We have none. Item 3 is approval of bingo and public gathering applications. Item 3A is application number 2058-17, Driftwood Park Civic Association to hold a public gathering on January 20th, 2018 from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. for the purpose of a parade throughout the Driftwood subdivision in Kenner, Louisiana. Item 3B is application number 2059-17, the City of Kenner to hold a public gathering on January 15, 2018 from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. for the purpose of a Martin Luther King Jr. celebration at 200 Decatur Street in Kenner, Louisiana. Item 4 is correspondence, reports from the mayor, CAO, or department heads. Item 4A, at the request of the administration, a report from Mayor Zahn.
Mayor Zahn, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Council President. Just real briefly, this is basically marking our first year in office for the administration. I want to thank the council for their support on numerous issues and legislation that were brought before you all, along with the Chief of Police for his support with the Kenner Police Department. Yeah, like I said, it's been almost 1 year. It'll be a year actually in January, but this is ending our first calendar year. I think Councilman Wilmot, actually, his anniversary is right around now. Is that correct? So I appreciate your support like everybody else. City of Kenner is doing really well. As I've reported over the last year, all the numerous businesses we've opened, how our sales tax has fluctuated up and down, but more ups than downs. So that's a good thing to talk about and a good thing to brag about. We've seen a lot of good things come into the city. We've made it through our first budget for this administration. I think we've proven that we can work with this council, deliver the bunker gear that the fire department needs, deliver the needs of the police department and all of our departments throughout our city. Some people say we have expanded government. I don't think we've expanded government. I think we've put into the 2 or 3 departments that we've needed, departments that have needed to be addressed that will help further impact the city of Kenner and inform our Kenner residents. With that, I want to wish each and every one of you, along with the city of Kenner residents, Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. We'll be back after the New Year because we do have a 3-week break, and I appreciate all the support, and it's been a pleasure working with you all.
Thank you, Mayor.
Yes, sir. I believe we have a motion by Councilmember Wilmot, second by Councilmember DeFranchise on the consent agenda.
Council, please vote. Yes, screen.
Mr. Chairman, motion passes 7-0 for the consent agenda. Under the public appearance agenda tonight, we have item 9, public hearings for final passage. Item 9A is a public hearing regarding summary ordinance number 12,324, an ordinance approving a re-subdivision of Lot 404A, part of Arpent Lot 437 and part of Arpent Lot 438, Old Kenner subdivision, Kenner, Jefferson Parish, Louisiana, into lots 438A and 403A, which lots are owned by Brookwood Webster LLC.
Motion by Councilman Carroll, second by Councilman Segura to open the public hearing. Council, please vote.
Mr. Chairman, motion passes 7-0 to open your hearing.
Mr. Hebert, you have a report, sir? Yes, sir. Thank you.
The applicant and the owner of the property is Brookwood Webster LLC. The property is generally bounded by Airline Drive to the north, Kenner Avenue to the south, Webster Street to the east, and Clay Street to the west. Lots 437 and 438 are zoned special industrial, while lot 404A is split zoned special industrial and RR1 single-family residential. Existing lot 437 is an irregular shaped lot measuring 13,693 square feet. Existing lot 438 is also irregular shaped, measuring 19,511 square feet. And lot 404A contains 77,728 square feet. Proposed lot 438A measures approximately 67,200 square feet, while proposed lot 403A consists of approximately 39,732 square feet. New lot 438A will be zoned special industrial, while lot 403A will be zoned RR1 single-family residential. AT&T has indicated that they maintain a cell tower located on the north side of the property. In conjunction with the cell tower, AT&T maintains a 15-foot access and utility easement. AT&T plans to maintain the easement indefinitely. No new easement of access or extension or creation of any public improvements is required. Both lots meet the minimum lot size for their respective zoning districts. On October 25th, the Planning Commission recommended approval.
Thank you, Mr. Hebert. Is there anyone in the audience wishing to speak on this subject? Seeing none. Motion by Councilman Carroll. Oh, Councilman Reno, you have the floor.
Hold on, sir. Hold on.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Hebert, this is a re-subdivision, not a rezoning. Is that correct? Yes, sir. Okay. I just wanted to clarify that. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilman. And seeing no other, motion by Councilman Carroll, second by Councilman Segura to close the public hearing. Council, please vote.
Mr. Chairman, motion passes 7-0 to close your hearing.
And before we vote on it, I'd just like to say that, you know, this particular project, which is in District 1, started out on a rocky trail, I must say. I think no one got everything that they wanted, but everybody got something that they wanted, and that's just a process that we have to go through. And I think at the end of the day, not everyone, but most people will be comfortable with what the project is going to bring, and it's going to bring to the city also, and it's going to alleviate an eyesore that we have right on Airline Highway. That being said, I'd like to thank the Attorney's Office, Ms. Fauché, Ms. Fortunato, for their support, because a lot of this was some legal issues that is outside of my preview of what I know, and I think it took the understanding with the planning department, with the administration, and everyone else to get down to what is legal, what is fair to everyone. And I think at the end of the day, that happened. So I would like to ask for your support on this. Motion by Councilman Carroll, second by Councilman Segura to accept. Council, please vote. Well, Councilwoman DeFrances, you have the floor.
Thank you, Council President. We usually wait till after we move on to ask questions of general questions, so forgive me for taking this opportunity to do so. Because I want to reiterate something that first Councilman Reno stated, because I had some very big qualms about this, I'll be honest with you. But we are not rezoning. It was already zoned, am I not correct, Mr. Aber, as special industrial?
Yes, this is not a rezoning, this is a re-subdivision of land.
I want to get it again on the record, but I wanted to ask you a question. This happened a long time ago, that they put a special industrial next to an R1. We would no longer do that kind of zoning. Am I not correct? Because we normally don't believe that you should have special industrial next to single-family homes. This is a unique situation because it happened so long ago, and as we just pointed out, we're not doing rezoning. But am I correct, so people feel a bit more comfortable?
You are correct. The existing
This is not something we would normally do nowadays.
You are correct. The existing zoning has been out there for decades. There's sort of a practice in planning when it comes to zoning districts that there's sort of a hierarchy or pyramid where you would not place a very intensive industrial zoning district adjacent to a single-family residential zoning district. Makes no
sense.
Exactly.
Thank you for that. I wanted people to feel more comfortable because this is such a unique situation and really something that nowadays would never have happened. Thank you so much for clarifying it for the public.
Also, since Councilwoman DeFrances brought that up, for the public, this property is over 50 years old. It resides in District 1 in the city of Kenner. It's the oldest section of the city. So I assure you there are a lot of things in code and planning that happened way back when Kenner was first established that can no longer happen. So this is just one of those as we move forward. It's no different when a person applies to remodel their home. They don't have to meet the code for their electricity, plumbing, or water. They have to bring it up to code. So there will be others like this as it relates to buildings and properties in the District 1, and I'm sure we will not allow what happened back then because it's just not the case anymore. So it's just not something that was arbitrarily put in place in District 1. It was during the time there were not any code, there were not any planning, anything like that. So again, I ask for your support. Motion by Councilman Carroll, second by Councilman Segura to accept. Council, please vote.
Mr. Chairman, motion passes 7-0. Item 9B is a public hearing regarding summary ordinance number 12,318, an ordinance regarding amendments to the Kenner's Unified Development Code, ordinance number 11,062, adopted March 17, 2016, regarding the parking and storage of recreational vehicles and recreational watercraft.
Motion by Councilman Segura, second by Councilman Wilmot. This says, Councilman Segura, you have the floor. Yeah, motion for deferral.
Yes, I received a request from the city attorney's office this afternoon to indefinitely defer.
Okay, on the deferral, council, please vote. No. Oh, you want to speak? Go ahead.
Your motion was your second by who?
It was a motion by Segura, second by Wilmot.
Thank you, sir.
On the deferral.
Particularly for the members of the audience that have been patiently working through this process with the council for a year or more now. We, with all good intents, as you know, have worked on this issue to hear from the public, to figure out which way to go. You know, we've had, I think, 8 or so civic association meetings, a couple public meetings. Each step of the way, we intently listened to what everyone had to say as to whether they were for or against the legislation that had been voted on in March of 18 relative to the UDC that had language prohibiting boats. So with that process, legislation was filed. I filed a bill. Councilman Klein filed an ordinance. We both hoped that we would have something to discuss tonight and perhaps settle this. But as things sometimes happen, we were informed this morning by our legal department that we have a procedural problem with each of the pieces of legislation that were filed. And to that end is the purpose of the indefinite deferral. But I would want to call upon our city attorney, Ms. Lee Roussel, to give that legal explanation so as I don't perhaps say it wrong, because I'm still digesting it myself, but I do understand the need for it. So, Ms. Lee Roussel, could you explain y'all's?
Yes, sir. So both of these ordinances that are on the agenda, 9B and 9C, we're recommending an indefinite deferral for these because there is a specific process that's outlined in Section 6.03H of the UDC that was not followed. So these items went on the agenda, directly on the agenda, and the process as outlined in the UDC is that the change to the text of the zoning ordinance be initiated by this council by motion, and that after the regular delays and advertisement, that it go before the Planning and Zoning Commission for their approval, and then also the charter has to be followed, which is 2.13, which is a 28-day layover for all zoning text changes, so changes to the UDC. So it's our position legally that these two pieces of legislation can never be approved by this council, and therefore we're recommending that an indefinite deferral be voted on and considered and hopefully adopted, and that we will initiate the process starting at the next council meeting.
Thank you. So what that has said is the crust of why, somewhat with a saddened heart, I'm going to support this indefinite deferral on my legislation and hope for both legislations so that we can do this properly, because I would sure hate to have gone through this effort and then realize that, yeah, I made a mistake. And that may be obviously what has occurred, that by filing this directly, myself and the other councilman, that we inadvertently bypassed a provision in the UDC that says it must go through the Planning and Zoning Board. So to allow that to take place, and the fact that this legislation not going through the Planning and Zoning Board technically cannot be voted on at any point in time if it was deferred for 2 meetings, 3 meetings, or whatever. But I will assure you that we have laid out the steps. This will make it on the February 28th, I think it was, date, okay? That will be the next Planning and Zoning Board meeting that this will be on their agenda. So February 28th, here, the Planning and Zoning Board meets. This topic will be on their agenda. Then it's open to the public. Everyone come, please be prepared to state your positions. Then the Planning and Zoning Board will presumably make a recommendation to the council, and then that will come to us in the form of legislation. Then it, as Lee just said, it has to sit for 28 days. So if the Jay, you correct me if I said anything wrong here, if they meet on February 28th, will we be able to put that on first reading for our first meeting in March?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So then we'll have to let it sit for 28 days, which will push us back to the first meeting in April, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Now, with that, then we will be ready to vote on whatever comes out of the Planning Zoning Board, which could also be amended by us at that time, too. So that is the chronological steps that we, to make this certainly legal, proper, and right for everyone, so we don't have any challenges, I guess, to have to defend, that we have to go through. Now, what does that mean? Really not a whole lot, because we still have the moratorium in effect through the end of April, which says it's not being enforced. So we have no harm there that anything's going to happen between now and April, because it still falls into the non-enforcement of it. So by that first meeting in April, when we vote, it will still take 17 days, presumably, to become effective. It'll still be before the end of April, so that if something, depending on how it comes out, changes, that the moratorium will still be in effect or about to end. So I just want to ensure and hopefully put at ease all of the participants, and I see Mr. Gregg wants to talk, so up to the council president, but that we're only doing this to ensure that it's done in the formal, proper way that our rules require us. So I do take the responsibility that if I put this on the agenda and fail to realize that this is why I want to start the process and get it done properly. So with that, that's my explanation for the indefinite deferral on my legislation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Wilmot, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to say, of course, I'm seconding that motion as well. And basically, we had the suspension of the enforcement of the current the current law that we have in place. We did that some time ago. That also had to go before planning and zoning, if you recall. So that's the procedural process that this must take place. So again, here we're in a situation where we have to do this. It's not going to make sense to go forward with it. I think we'll have an invalid law in the books, according to what legal has just said. So therefore, I'm going to support the indefinite deferral based on that. And we need to come back and we need to do something to correct it, of course, and fix the issue, because this has been an ongoing problem for some time, and I plan on supporting that as well. So that's my stance, and thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Reno, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Ms. Roussel, so basically, if we don't indefinitely defer, and we did like a 2-meeting deferral and then did another 2-meeting deferral, whenever it did come up after it went through planning, the Planning Commission, then we would be voting on legislation that
Right.
would be illegal.
Correct. The legislation that comes out of the Planning and Zoning Commission is going to require a first reading, a 28-day layover, so deferring this for 2 meetings at a time. It's our opinion that you can never approve this because it didn't have a 28-day layover, and something that comes out of the Planning and Zoning Commission may actually differ from what, the legislation you have before you tonight. So it just causes confusion, and we think it's procedurally incorrect. So that's why we recommended the indefinite deferral.
And the planning and zoning, Mr. Hebert, that's basically vetting that to the public so that they get some input in a public setting to be able to discuss the legislation, correct?
Yes, sir. The purpose is to allow or provide due process for the public to speak on the matter.
So basically, the legislation should not have been put up until it went through that process.
It's got to follow the process.
That's the process. Okay, I'll be supporting an indefinite deferral. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilwoman DeFranchise, you have the floor.
Thank you, Council President. Actually, this is going to refer to this one plus the next one, so I'm going to ask the question. I understand everything you said, but I think we need to clarify a couple of points to make sure everyone is clear on this. Let's just say that there was a 2-meeting deferral. Because it had not gone through planning and zoning, it had already gone through a first reading before, but it had not followed the actual procedure that it needed to be followed. Am I correct that it would have to go back through a first reading at some point after it went to planning and zoning before we could ever have a vote on it? I know it's a little complicated question the way I asked it.
It's a question that we weren't really asked to look at. What came to our attention yesterday evening was that basically these were on the agenda for final adoption.
Right.
And, a 2-meeting deferral is not recommended because obviously in 2 meetings from now, you're still going to be in the process through Planning and Zoning Commission. So, but as far as whether it could ultimately be adopted at the first meeting in
questionable?
April, I don't recommend that.
So it's
legally.
questionable at best.
I think it's right. I think it's procedurally flawed, Councilwoman DeFranchise, and that's why we're recommending the indefinite.
And that's why I'm saying it's questionable at best that possibly it could even get before us for a vote without going through that procedure.
If it resembles what comes out of that commission, yes.
Okay, because as you mentioned, it might be something totally different.
Could be.
And they have the right to do that, am I not correct?
But ultimately, y'all are the final, decision.
Absolutely. We can go with it or against their recommendations, we know
Amend it,
that.
yes.
But I wanted to put it on the record because there's been some controversy as to whether, well, if we just defer it, once it goes through planning and zoning, then we'll just vote on it. But it seems to me from what you're telling me, that's not the procedure we can follow. We would still have to go through appropriate steps before it could ever come before this council for a vote.
I don't recommend a meeting-to-meeting deferral.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Councilman Klein, did you want to speak? No. Okay. Councilman Klein, you have the floor.
Council President, we of three people, myself as chairman, Mike Segura as a member, and also Tom Wilmot as a member. And I see a lot of people that we had at the meetings here tonight. They had people on both sides, people that wanted their boats in front of their house, and some people that didn't want the boats in front of their house. As the chairman of the committee, and we all agreed to this, all the committee members and the other councilmen, we want to help everybody. We don't want to hurt anybody. We don't want to take your boats away from you. But if you got a big enough lot to where you could put it on the side, there would be no reason to not put it on the side or in the back of your house. And so we tried to keep that throughout the whole meetings that we said would help everyone. Now, I don't like the term indefinite. We don't want to kick the can down the street any longer, and it never comes up again. If we defer it for 2 meetings, we know we're going to keep our feet to the fire. And when I say our feet, my feet, the mayor's feet, everybody's feet up here that's making decisions, because I firmly believe after having 9 meetings, and each meeting was 2 to 3 hours or longer, we had people on both sides. They want to get this thing resolved. And they want to know if we're going to stick to our word to help everyone, and that's what we're going to do. So I don't want to kick the can down the street and say indefinite. I want it done, and I want it done expeditiously. The procedure is not complete with the planning department, zoning, and the legal. So we have to make sure that they satisfy with the language. But the language is going to be up to us councilmen, not legal and not planning. So we want to get something passed that's going to help everyone, and we don't want to keep putting this thing off. Because the major concern I had with people was, we don't know. You're trying to take boats away. We don't know if you're going to take our boats away. We don't know if you're going to allow somebody to put a 35-foot boat in front of their house when they can put it on the side. So all of those people want to get this thing resolved. And I do too, as the committee chairman. I don't want to kick the can down the street. Let's get it on 2 meetings. And guess what? If we're not completely finished, we'll come to you and say we need another meeting or 2 to get it done. And I think that's what everybody's happy with. And that's what I'm not a vote against the indefinite deferral, because I don't like the language indefinite. And I know what the city attorney said. The city attorney can, we can agree as councilmen to defer it for 2 weeks. 2 meetings. That's not illegal. In fact, when we defer it, we can only defer it for 2 weeks. 2 meetings. We can always bring it up again for another deferral, okay? So I think all sides are protected. We're keeping our feet to the fire, and let's get it done like that. I would ask all my councilmen to vote against the, on 9C. If Mr. Segura wants to do his indefinite deferral, we'll probably vote for that. But on 9C, mine, I don't want to defer that indefinitely. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Name and address, sir.
Greg Taft, 3720 West Loyola Drive in Kenner. I'm just a little constituent out here, along with many others that have went through this for quite a while, and went to every meeting. We've done everything the council has asked us to do. I guess the most heartbreaking thing of tonight is, why did the legal department take so long to finally determine what was being done wasn't right? That is sad. And now we're being told we've got to delay again. In the beginning, I know me and Councilman Segura had a misunderstanding. I misunderstood him because I thought we could have this done at a certain period of time, and he said no, because once it went to zoning, then we had to wait to 28 days. We were looking for something a little bit different. So here again, we're being told it's being pushed back. Now, that being said, the law is the law. And as much as I've harped about what I think this council or the administration hasn't done by abiding by the charter and code, well, it's kind of hard for me to sit up here and say, well, you know, I want to go against it. But what I do want to say is this. I agree. We can't vote on it because it could be illegal down the road. And I don't want to take that chance because I'm a homeowner. I'm going to have a boat. And I hate to think that a year from now, all of a sudden you come up, oh, now you got to get rid of it again. That being said, I'm with Councilman Klein. I want to keep it alive because to me, the only way I know in my itty-bitty mind, because remember, I'm not that educated like you guys are, that it dies once it gets amended to indefinite. If we do it every 2 meetings, that's a month. That means it's possible that we could defer a month from now to a month from now and then to another month after that. By that time, we're going to be rolling along in that April, May, or March and April dates. All I'm asking you is, from our point of view, as the average citizen, we don't understand all these complexities that y'all throw up. What we do understand is simple words that says it's still alive. And indefinite tells me it's not. I mean, it's just in my mind. So I would hope that y'all would just, yes, let's defer it, but let's defer it 2 council meetings. And if we have to, we can defer it again a month from now to 2 council meetings, whatever it takes. But in our minds, as part of the voters,
30 seconds, Mr. Teff.
we know we have, that is still alive, and we're still got a chance to keep our votes. Thank you.
Name and address, sir. Go next.
Dennis Bergeron, 909 Ronson Drive, Kendall, Louisiana. I also agree with that gentleman about the deferral for the 2-week or the 2-meeting referral. To do it indefinite, the time's going to run out past April, and then where are we? Because it's got to go back to legal and all of this. Then we can't make the April 18 cutoff. So now, guess what? Y'all waited too long. Now get your boats out of here. No, let's go to 2-meeting referral, and if there's still a problem, then maybe we can get a powwow, get together and say, okay, maybe we'll talk to legal, maybe we'll talk to the zoning commission, and let's do whatever we got to do to get this thing settled before the date comes up of April 18. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Attorney Roussel, you have the floor.
To address Mr. Teff's comments, had either of these questions been presented to the legal department about the procedure, the proper procedure to follow prior to these items being placed directly on the agenda, we would have certainly advised them on the law. So again, it was brought to our attention and we're addressing it moving forward. Our recommendation is an indefinite deferral. As far as the April date, I believe that the final adoption, according to the schedule that we've outlined, it's not in front of you, but final adoption of the text changes would occur on April 5th. That date, obviously, the enforcement is an administrative matter. You know, the administration could certainly determine that they would not enforce the provision until such time as this council had approved the change. So.
Thank you. Councilman Tagore, you have the floor.
Just to close, I didn't know if anybody else.
Councilman Wilmot. Hold on, Councilman. Councilman Wilmot, you have the floor.
Just had some questions from Ms. Roussel, or Ms. Roussel. As far as the ordinance this before us now, if we did a 2-week or a 1 meeting or 2-meeting deferral, and I understand that 2 meetings is the maximum we can do at a time. If we did that, does it create any type of problems by having that done? Even though we can't vote on it down the road, probably can't vote on it, and it probably won't have the outcome that we would like to have with it even now, we would like to have that outcome, but we can't necessarily do it because it's flawed.
Correct.
So,
Again, it's our recommendation that it be indefinitely deferred so that it can go through the legal process outlined in the Unified Development Code. So there's nothing that prevents this council from entertaining and voting on a deferral for 2 meetings. That can happen. But when it comes up later on, it's not going to have gone through the process. So our recommendation is basically that rather than down the road, a motion to substitute or having that confusion, the indefinite deferral will allow it to go through the process procedurally, correctly, the way it's outlined in the UDC. It's our legal recommendation, but you all can entertain a 2-meeting deferral. That's up to you. We do not recommend that. Legally, we think that it should be an indefinite deferral and that it go through the process starting at the next meeting.
but it won't hurt anything if we do it.
It's just a motion to defer, sir. So, I mean, again, as I addressed Councilwoman DeFrances, we were not asked to look at that issue, and we will be happy to look at that issue. I don't know that I'm prepared legally to respond to that question tonight, but you certainly can entertain a procedural motion to defer
Thank you.
for 2 meetings.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Councilman Reno, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. After Ms. Roussel made those comments, I'm a little confused because, so we could do a 2-meeting deferral. We could go through the planning process like it normally does, which would mean probably another 2-meeting deferral, and still vote on this legislation.
And then another, and another, and another. No, not this legislation. You cannot vote on this legislation. It didn't go through the process to begin with correctly, procedurally. So you can never legally approve these 2 pieces of legislation. So you would be entertaining one day down the road, once I convince, I guess, the Councilman Klein, another indefinite deferral. We don't think that you can ever approve these pieces of legislation. They didn't follow the law. They didn't follow the law that's outlined in the UDC.
And that's what I understood the first time.
Right.
I questioned
Well,
it.
again, I hadn't been prepared to answer. Y'all are asking about something that's going to occur in the future. I don't think that either of these pieces of legislation can legally be adopted by this council at any time.
So the proper thing to do is indefinitely defer.
Correct.
Let it go through planning, go through the Planning Commission. Let them come back and say, yeah, we believe that this should be adopted. Then this same, if they say this exact legislation, let's say the public agrees with it, everybody agrees with it, then this legislation, as it's drafted right now, can be put back on after the indefinite, okay? So 2 months from now, once it goes through planning and all of that's done, they can take the same legislation that's written just like it is now and just put it back up for first reading.
That's right.
and adopt it. And that would be legally correct. However, adopting it as it is now on the agenda would not be legally correct.
It would have a new summary number. There is a process that that is followed. So, yes.
I mean, I understand that. I want to make sure that the public understands it because I think that they're going to be upset if we indefinitely defer this legislation thinking that, okay, we just lost. We went through all this process for nothing. All we're doing is indefinitely deferring it, going through the process of our planning department, and then putting it back up for first reading. And that's with the understanding that when it goes through the Planning Commission, that also is a public meeting to vet this process. And the people at that meeting may come and say, look, we like it, but we would like you to change this one thing, and then they can approve it with one little change, or they can say, we're approving it just like it is.
Exactly.
But that's the process. So
These 2 pieces didn't go through that process.
Right.
Therefore, would prefer it, and we're advising you legally to indefinitely defer, not a two-meeting deferral, an indefinite deferral. All I was trying to explain is that you certainly can consider a two-meeting deferral, but you will never be able to enact this legislation. It will not be legal, and you should therefore kill it tonight, for lack of a better term. That's what an indefinite deferral does, and go through the process legally, procedurally correct.
Right. And if we did a two-meeting deferral, and then we did another two-meeting deferral, and it went through planning and zoning, and they sent their recommendation that, yes, you should adopt this, and it comes back to us, we would have to, at that point, indefinitely defer this legislation and put it back on. It was just a matter of, it got put on the agenda before it went through its process. That's all this is. This legislation was put on the agenda before it went through the proper procedures. So, I hope you all understand that, but I'm going to be voting for an indefinite deferral only because procedurally, it's the only thing we can do. That's all we can do as council members is to indefinitely defer it and then let it come back up again through a first reading after it's gone through the Planning Commission. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilman. Mr. Hebert, you have the floor.
Thank you, Council President. And just to follow up, the reason for the Planning Commission's review, of course, they could approve it as is. They could recommend approval. They could recommend approval with some revisions of their own. So you may have an alternate draft as well. But it is to allow them, the Planning Commission, which is an advisory board to the council, the opportunity to review the draft as well, and then provide you guys with a recommendation.
Thank you, Mr. Hebert.
Thank you.
Name and address.
Richard Brown, Sessions Lane, Kenner. I can be very brief. Mr. Chairman or Mrs. Roussel, it's my understanding that with the indefinite deferral, the council intends to submit this same legislation, either one or both pieces, to the Planning Commission exactly as they're drafted now. That with the deferral, this isn't really dead, but you're going to submit these same documents to the Planning Commission for them to take up in the proper order. Is that correct?
Yes, with
Yes.
one additional step, Mr. Brown, that at the next meeting, a resolution will be adopted to initiate the process. So that's what's outlined in the UDC. It's different than the CZO, but yes.
Okay, thank you.
That's correct.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Mayor Zahn, you have the floor.
And I guess just to add to it, I do believe the moratorium on this would expire around the same time that this would probably come before this council. So it probably plays about the same time schedule that y'all need. Because I believe sometime within that month of April, the moratorium for no enforcement on this will expire next year, 2018, April. This will probably be before you all, I would think. I don't have all the dates in front of me, but I think Ms. Lee Roussel said April 5th. So within that time frame, this will actually work into what y'all have been trying to accomplish. Just my 2 cents from the administration.
Thank you, Mayor. Council President, may I ask the Mayor for point of clarification? Yes, Councilwoman DeFrances.
I don't have a mic, but I can make myself be heard. Mayor, part of the problem is, from what you said, that the two dates are very close to each other. And I believe a lot of the people in the audience have a fear that maybe you might go forward and enforce it before this council has the opportunity to look at the legislation. And I think what they're saying is that from your remarks, you're not quite sure. And I know you want it to be clear, but sometimes what's clear to us is not clear to someone else. So I think what they're asking is, Mayor, do you mean that if you had extended for a month so that the council had the opportunity to address the issue, you would do that?
My answer would be the same to you all, that I think y'all would commit tonight that y'all going to address this sometime in the month of April to put some laws on the books that make everyone happy in the city of Kenner. So yes, in answer to your question, if you all are going to do the same thing to say that you will work with these people that are sitting behind me, that you all will not come back to address this next April to make all the residents of the city of Kenner happy. So my answer is yes. Is your answer yes?
Yes.
Good.
And I wanted to clarify it because I think sometimes, we understand what we're saying, but someone listening may not. And I wanted to give you the opportunity to clarify your answer for them.
Anything else that we would probably do tonight would probably be misleading to the people of Kenner.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you, Council President.
Thank you, Councilwoman. And Councilman Segura, before you close, I'd just like to say that, I'm going to be supporting Councilman Segura, his indefinite. And I think when we use the word indefinitely, it gets people off wired that indefinite means forever. That's not the case, as the mayor has said, as planning has said, as the attorney has said, as everyone up here has said. We're not going to not do this. It's just from a legal standpoint, we would be in a bad position to try to vote on something that someone can simply come back and say, we didn't legally do that. And I can just say from my experience on the aforementioned legislation before, that process took a long time, and we would have a meeting, and it was pushed back 2 weeks. And then we would come in, and people would say, okay, be ready to go. And then legally, something came up, and we had to push it back 2 weeks. To be honest with you, people were more upset about that because there was a sense of more kicking it down the can as opposed to picking a date that you're going to live with and apply the laws, as opposed to putting it on for 2 weeks, come back 2 weeks later. Well, we're not going to do it today. We're going to do it 2 weeks later. Well, we're not going to do it today. We're going to do it 2 weeks later. That got into a position where most of the residents got frustrated with that. But I believe had we said, come back in a month and we will have everything together, I think that would have been a better position. So as far as it relates to Councilman Segura, as far as it relates to the legal aspect of this, I will be supporting his legislation. Councilman Segura, you have the floor to close.
Thank you. And again, I mentioned this in the opening, and that's why after all of this discussion, I think each of us are trying to make clear this is no way, shape, or form the end of this discussion. It's an unfortunate change of path that came, and I'll say it because in the zealousness of myself, perhaps Councilman Klein, to get to some conclusion, after all of the discussions we've had, we put something together and put it on the agenda. We didn't ask legal. It's not particularly their fault. We didn't ask them, could we? We know we can. We didn't ask them, was it right or wrong? I agree. I did not ask that. But thankfully to Councilman Carroll, who did ask that question, it caused legal to look further and then come back and go, yeah, there is an issue over here that does not allow you to do what you're trying to do now. So you have to go through this process. So after very, very lengthy conversation this morning between myself and legal, we walked through all of these steps to ensure that when I said them, and we'll say them again, will happen from this point forward, that they will happen because we have the commitment from the administration, the legal, to do that. We've heard the statements. We heard what you want. We're trying to now just make sure it's right. So I'm going to reiterate, even though this indefinite deferral kills this legislation, it will now be presented to the Planning and Zoning Board for their review. As stated, on February 28th, they will meet. We have the assurance legal will get it there. Jay will make sure it's there, and it gets on their agenda. Please come to that meeting. You've told us, tell them what you want. Then they will make a recommendation in the form of an ordinance. It may be the exact same as you see tonight that I'm asking for this deferral on. It could very well be the same, but if it's not, then we'll deal with the changes that do come forth at that time. So I'm trying to make sure, and I know others have said the same thing, we have a timeline set in stone to get it to a finish. April 5th, it'll be back on our agenda to vote. It's still within the timeline of the no enforcement, so there's no concern about any lapse of that. The administration cannot enforce what's there not able to enforce until the end of April, correct? Yes, so it's the end of April before they can enforce. So by April 5th, we should make a decision. But even if a worst-case scenario, somebody says, oh, I didn't get enough information today and I want another deferral, there's another meeting in April that can be voted on and be still finished in time before the moratorium ends. So
Yeah, that's okay.
I am pledging to you, we will not just kick this down the street. We are pulling it along to get it where we want to go, just making sure it's done legal. So again, I encourage unfortunately, believe me, I am not happy with this at all. I wanted to settle this tonight, one way or the other. But unfortunately, I want to ask, again, for my colleagues to support the indefinite deferral on this and presumably the other one following this so we can get this process back and put it to where we can come back in April 5th and vote on it.
Thank you, Councilman.
I said that. When I wrote legislation, and presumably Councilman Klein and others, we just said here, is this okay? And they look at it and go, yeah, it's fine. But I didn't ask them to say, does it meet every rule in the world? I apologize for that. Okay, I got that lesson learned now that perhaps I do need to be a little bit more questionable. But again, we promised y'all at every meeting we went to a timeline. And I said we would have public meetings in this period, and then there would be a 30-day period, and then we would file legislation to be voted on by the end of December. Did I not say that?
Yes.
I appreciate that, but it's not a debate as to whether they did or
Councilman
didn't.
Segura, if the gentleman wants to ask a question, would he please come to the mic?
Okay, if he wants to come up and ask that question.
Yeah, if not, we don't want to go back
Yeah,
and
I can't
forth from
just-
the audience.
That's why I'm trying to shut it down. I'm just trying to say that it's not their fault. If any one of us ask a question, they're going to answer the question we ask, and I take blame for that I didn't ask the full breadth. But I do, like I said, commend Councilman Carroll, who brought it to their attention and then did cause the question to come up. So with that, I have to yield to now say this is the proper course, and we will monitor it. I will be watching it, and I know others will be, that we gets on February 28th, Planning Zoning Board will hear it, and it gets on our agenda, and on April 5th, we hopefully can vote on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Motion by Councilman Segura, second by Councilman Wilmot to approve.
You're voting on indefinite deferral.
On an indefinite deferral. Council, please vote. And my screen is out, Madam Clerk, but yes.
Can you vote on your?
It's not allowing me to. That work?
Yeah, one more vote, please.
Okay. I didn't. I did touch it. Maybe that's what it is.
Did everybody vote? Councilman Klein? Mr. Chairman, motion passes 5-2. Councilmember Hand and Klein are opposed.
I just would like to remind the council people, my monitor is having trouble right now, so if you would like to address something, just kind of shout at me so I can give you the mic because it's not working.
Item 9C is a public hearing regarding summary ordinance number 12,328, amendments to the Kenner's Unified Development Code, ordinance number 11,062, adopted March 17, 2016, regarding the parking and storage of recreational vehicles and recreational watercraft.
Motion by Councilman Klein, second by Councilwoman Hand. Councilman Klein, would you like to?
Mr. Chairman, we've also received a request, just to clarify for the council, from the legal department this evening for an indefinite deferral on this item as well, just to make sure that's on the record. That came from the legal department, like the previous item, okay? Yes, for the record. Councilman Klein, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you. All right, like I said earlier, And I think other councilmen, such as Councilman DeFrancis, can verify this, that the council has been working on these issues, not just for 6 months, not for a year, but for several years. And I think we need to bring this to a conclusion. From what I heard in non-meetings, that everybody wants this to come to a conclusion. And all I'm simply saying is, if it can't be done now, then it's not illegal. We can re-urge the same language, the same ordinance, and ask the council to pass the same ordinance that we have up now. But I think since everybody, including myself, want to get this thing resolved, it needs to be resolved for both sides, that the appropriate thing, the prudent thing to do, and the reasonably intelligent thing to do is to pass it for 2 meetings, and let's see what we can accomplish between that. And that will be on the docket, it'll be fresh in our minds, and we'll try to, I'll try to meet with Councilman Segura and some of the other council members and see if we need to change up some of the language, we can do that. If not, we can submit the same ordinance, the same language that we have now in non-C, that I think would benefit the entire city, and everybody would be happy with that. The people that own boats, that have small lots, they can't put it anywhere else besides in front of their house, and it would also satisfy some of the people with larger lots that they can put their boat on the side of their house. So I think all this discussion, really, it seems like it's all a discussion about nothing, because all we had to do was pass it up for a couple meetings. Nobody would be perfectly happy with that, but certainly nobody would be mad. As several people's already said tonight, that an indefinite deferral to them is that it's not coming back up. So to satisfy their thoughts, as well as my own thoughts, I thought the same thing, is why not continue it or defer it for 2 meetings, and it's still fresh in everybody's mind. There's no harm, no foul. Everybody wants to get this resolved, and that's the way to do it. It's not just a current issue. It's been around for years.
Yeah,
It's been costing both sides a lot of anguish, and we've saw all the anguish at the meetings that we held. And there's several people here tonight that expressed their anguish and frustration, and particularly the boat owners to say, well, we might lose our boat. Code might come out here and tell us we have to move our boat. So if we get it resolved, we'll know where everyone stands. That's the most reasonable thing to do. If the procedure is not complete yet, then we just have to do it for 2 meetings. We don't have to do it until April. It may not, in fact, come up to April, but I think we need to keep it fresh on the agenda so we won't have another reason later on to say, well, it's not finished again. We want to get this done this year, early this year. The sooner we get it resolved for everyone, I think the better everyone's going to feel about it. And that's the great weight of the evidence that I gathered with my committee members in the meetings that we had. We want to get this thing resolved. We don't want to push it off any longer, and the frustration just increases. So I think to resolve all the frustration of the citizens of all the districts, all of Kenner, that we need to have this come to a conclusion. Like I said, the same ordinance can be put up again. It just can't be done right now because legal and planning has not finished their process, and they'll be finished that shortly. You know, it's the holidays now, so probably a lot won't be done until after the first of the year. So you have to give us some time to do that. But certainly if we keep it on the agenda, it will get done. And I think even Ms. Roussel said that we could put up the same legislation. We could change it. We can substitute some language in it, whatever. We just have to follow another procedure. So I don't want for anybody to think that's listening to this or sitting in this ordinance that we're going to defer this indefinitely, because I don't want to do it. I'm not voting for that. I'm voting for a 2-meeting deferral. I can't tell my other councilmen what to do, but I'm going to vote for a 2-meeting deferral because that's what everybody wants. They want to get this thing resolved sooner rather than later. Sooner rather than later, and that's the way to do it. And I'm not blaming anybody for anything. We did our job. Legal and planning's doing their job. It's just not quite complete. Okay, I think that's all I have to say, Mr. President.
Okay. Well, before I go to that, my screen is off. Does anybody want to?
Just as a point of clarification, the motion on the floor, we need to clarify what your motion on the floor is right now, what you're discussing. So the clerk introduced, as per the legal department, an indefinite deferral request.
Right.
Is that what you're discussing
We're
right now?
discussing, Councilwoman Hand, is that what you want to discuss about the indefinite deferral? Yes, that's what we're discussing now, and then we're going to come back and put on the floor Councilman Klein's request for a 2-meeting.
Yes, because I had no second to his 2 meetings, so we're still on
You're still on the indefinite,
deferral.
right.
I called, yeah, we have
Yeah.
Klein, second by Hand, on an indefinite deferral as per the legal department's
No,
request to the clerk's.
I'm not moving on that for an indefinite deferral. My thoughts are quite clear, I think.
Okay.
Councilman Segura, you have the floor.
I recognize the legal department's comments of wanting indefinite deferral on both. That's why when I spoke earlier, I talked about mine. The council clerk has, on record, said they have a request for a motion for an indefinite deferral on the second one, which is up right now. Councilman Klein is discussing a 2-meeting deferral. None of these motions have been moved and seconded, they've just been talked. So procedurally, if you as president are going to yield to Councilman Klein to put in his 2-meeting deferral first, then we have to vote on that, see where that goes, and then perhaps put a second one up if his doesn't pass.
But it was second. It was second.
Was second?
So your motion right now, just to have discussion and put the open your hearing for the ordinance, is Klein, second by Hand.
That's just to open the public hearing.
I clarified, after that motion, that was just to discuss and talk about it.
You don't have your,
The clerk's office received a request for an indefinite deferral. So I don't have a motion and a second on indefinite deferral, and I don't have a motion and a second on a 2-meeting deferral. Right now, we're just talking about the ordinance, and it's on the floor.
Right.
Still in a public hearing.
Yes.
That's what the
Yes.
motion and second is to go.
I'm going to change, Councilman Klein wants to come off of it, but Councilwoman Hand would like to speak. We're just, it's still in the discussion.
That's fine.
Yes.
Just on discussion.
It's on
right now,
discussion.
just talking.
Yes, Councilwoman Hand, you have the floor. On the deferral, on the indefinite deferral.
Or no, it's a public hearing.
Oh, public hearing, excuse me, public hearing.
We're just
Sorry
talking
about
about the ordinance right now.
if Councilman Klein would like to move for a 2-meeting deferral, that would be appropriate at this time, but you are in a public hearing, so you have to allow the
Ms.
public
Russell,
hearing
the
process.
council president has spoke. He wants Councilman Hand to speak, okay?
She said no.
You don't want to speak? Okay. Do we have, you want to do my motion, a 2-meeting deferral?
Councilwoman Hand, would you want to speak or not? Just a discussion. You don't have to if you don't want to. Okay. Okay, okay. Discussion, just on the discussion. Councilman Wilmot, just for the discussion.
Thank you. And I just wanted to see if we can, of course, I applaud Councilman Klein's passion for his issue, but being that as it may, I still see that you have 9B and 9C, that now 9C we have up. And I wanted to ask Ms. Roussel if you would elaborate once again for us regarding 9C as far as the legalities with it. I know you sent out a letter and so forth, but I'd like to hear it again on 9C, so
Sure.
thank you.
I could read my memo into the record if you would allow me to do that. But,
Absolutely.
But it's the same argument, Councilman Wilmot.
Okay.
Basically, it was brought to our attention yesterday that this legislation, which was placed on the agenda, did not go through the process that's outlined in Section 6.03H of the city's UDC, the Unified Development Code. It also did not follow the charter, Section 2.13, which is particular ordinances, which requires a 28-day layover for all changes to the zoning ordinance, changes to the zoning text. of the UDC. So based on it not following the procedural process, based on the procedural process being flawed, we are recommending that both 9B, which has already been decided, and 9C now be indefinitely deferred.
Okay, and ultimately, if these are voted on down the road, that they would have a flaw to them as well?
Correct.
Okay, and that's what I wanted to make sure. And also, you mentioned earlier on 9B, you said it could never be approved by the council. Is that true with 9C as well?
Yes, sir. I mean, our argument is the same for each piece of legislation. Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. So, Madam Clerk, now we're going to go with Councilman Klein.
We got to close public hearing and then move into something.
Yeah, okay. My screen is off. Do you want?
Okay, just to clarify, the previous piece of legislation, we motioned, we second. I read into the record that the city attorney was requesting an indefinite deferral. At that time, we went into discussion on indefinite deferral, and then we went to vote. We did not open, we did not close, we did not do that. We simply went straight into indefinite deferral as per the request of the city attorney's office. When we opened this piece, we read into the record, we had a motion and a second. The clerk's office clarified that she had received an indefinite deferral on this item, just like the previous item, and we went into discussion. At that time, Councilman Klein opened and expressed his opposition to indefinite deferral and requested that he would like a 2-meeting deferral at that point. He had no second to his 2-meeting deferral motion.
Well, I didn't make a
He
motion.
didn't put a motion up.
I didn't make a motion.
Just discussed
Just made a
it.
request that he would like it to be a 2-meeting, no second, no motion or anything. So at that time, we were still on the item as the clerk read it in, like the previous item.
Right.
And as we were discussing, like the previous item, an indefinite deferral.
Right.
Okay? So that's how we were proceeding with this item. We did not open it, we did not close it. We were simply speaking on indefinite deferral as the city attorney's office had requested.
So, Ms. Tartaglia, is the motion on the floor is for an indefinite deferral with no second?
That was the request that I had put in. Now, I needed to clarify if I had a councilman who motioned and seconded to support the indefinite deferral, to put it on the floor for discussion. We went into Mr. Klein's discussion. He did not express support of that. So Councilman Segura expressed support of the indefinite deferral in the previous item. That's why we went into the discussion on indefinite deferral immediately. This item, I would need a motion and a second to clarify that I have support of an indefinite deferral. Then we can continue with indefinite deferral conversation.
Okay.
Mr. President, I had to ask you to make a deferral for 2 meetings. Now, I think we need to vote on that.
Okay, but Councilman Reyno would like to speak before we.
Sure, that's fine.
Councilman Reyno.
Sure. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. President. Okay, so the way I understand it right now, we are in public hearing, and the council clerk read that she had a motion for indefinite deferral. Now, seeing that there was a committee of 3 from this council who worked on this legislation, is there any one of those 3 people would like to move on the indefinite deferral?
Nope.
Because if somebody moves, then we could possibly get a second, but and I think out of courtesy, I would hope that one of those 3 members of that committee would move on whether or not they want to do an indefinite deferral. Then we could try to maybe get a second. So is anybody there want to move? Any of those 3 council members would like to move?
Mr. President, can I say something?
Yes, Councilman Klein.
I want to move on a 2-meeting deferral.
Okay, we're going to get to that, but we're going to close out. We're going to close.
Council didn't make that motion for indefinite deferral, and neither.
We're doing it right now.
Okay.
We're doing it right now.
Let's clear one motion.
Right, and that's on the indefinite deferral. Motion by Councilman
moved, right?
Segura, second by Councilman Wilmot on the indefinite deferral.
Thank you. Yes.
Council, please vote.
One more vote, please.
One more vote.
Mr. Chairman, motion passes 4-3 to indefinitely defer. Council members Hand, Klein, and DeFrances are opposed.
So now we want to go to Councilman Klein motion.
No, sir. Your motion is to indefinitely defer now. Now we move to the next agenda item. Your motion passed to indefinitely defer. We move on. Item 10 is opening of bids. We have none. Item 11 is reclassification of zoning for final passage. We have none. Item 12 is other ordinances for final passage. Item 12A is summary ordinance number 12,319, an ordinance establishing Kenner Fire Prevention Bureau. If I could get a motion and a second on item 12A, sir?
Motion by Councilwoman DeFrances, second by Councilman Wilmot. Council, please vote.
Mr. Chairman, motion passes 7-0. Item 12B is summary ordinance number 12,320, an ordinance amending various portions of the Kenner Code of Ordinances, Chapter 15, related to temporary traffic regulations in the city of Kenner.
Motion by Councilman Segura, second by Councilwoman Hand. Council, please vote.
Councilman Seguri, you have the floor.
Okay, Councilman Segura, you have the floor. I can't.
No, I agree. That's what.
Yeah.
Okay, this legislation is, in concept, a citywide need for the ability of our police chief and his police officers to have the capability to move traffic as needed, depending on any special circumstance occurring in the city after a permit is issued. Now, any organization can have a desire to do something in the city. They must file for a permit, which then goes to through routing to the police department. The passage of this legislation allows the police chief to have the authority to then set out what he wants the traffic pattern to be so that he can provide the best safety for the participants at that event or the general traffic in the area. It's unfortunate that in today's circumstances of mass crowd events that there's a really strong public safety need for our police chief to dictate how he can better protect the city by having traffic patterns change temporarily. So what this legislation is going to do is just that, allow the police chief that authority to, through the routing of a permit, say, here's where I want traffic to go, here's where I want no parking signs, whatever it takes for him to ensure that he can keep that event as safe as possible. With that said, though, I don't want to speak too much, even though I have some experience, but we have a police chief. So, Chief, would you like to chime in on this?
Yes. I requested this after last year's Driftwood Parade. That's why Driftwood's mentioned in here. It's not solely for Driftwood. It's a citywide ordinance that requesting for a temporary traffic control. It could be a no parking sign. This, the Driftwood, I guess the origin of this was the beginning of the Driftwood Parade. We had low traffic congestion because there was really no, I guess, set schedule. In years past, it seemed to work out, but last year was a little, the parade's bigger, you get more participants and units in it. We had children walking in the area, the organization area. We had the back vehicles out, so it was just a, something that I see where we can put a temporary traffic restriction, making a one-way street, making a no parking zone. Even in Lake Town, when you have a large, like the Freedom Fest, or in Rivertown, when you have a function where we try to make a barrier now these days, where you can put a no parking zone where you try to keep the vehicles a little bit further away. And that's all it was. It was a safety issue that I had last year. I approached the Driftwood Board to start this organization of trying to get it better organized in the parade, and then it just, I guess, grew into a citywide because we had issues with a few other events also. So and it's not just me walking out there or the chief of police walking out there. It's in, I guess, meeting with the event planners, and if the council members want to know, we write notes on the permitting process where I can write that we need a no parking barrier or temporary restrictions on the special event application. So.
Okay, well, again, that's the gist of why this legislation is brought forth. It's a purely public safety, citywide discussion, and too many events around the country have shown that they are mass crowd events are a target of unrest, terrorism, whatever you want to call it. And it's certainly within the realm of the police chief's responsibility in protecting our city to know where there's potential problems and hopefully through his guidance remove from the area of the event those obstacles, those possibilities, and God forbid we ever have something in our city that we've been fortunate not to have. So that's the purpose of this. I think there's some event practically in every district of this city between parades, festivals. You may have a business that's somewhat controversial, and all of a sudden there's a mass demonstration or a picketing of that establishment. That creates traffic and crowd control problems that this legislation clearly allows the chief to have the ability to address. So with that is my purpose of supporting this wholeheartedly. Thank you.
Thank you. Name and address, sir.
John DeHaven, 46 Madrid in Kenner. I am the president of the Civic Association, and I just want to thank the chief for everything that he has done for us. This will be the 49th year that we have done this parade, and yes, it has grown. We had 55 units last year. We did not have enough police on hand or enough barricades, and our problems were people were moving the barricades and not getting themselves off the street to let the parade go by. We're not asking for anything that any other municipality in this area has, and that's a little more protection. We've got to come up with $1 million worth of insurance just to have this parade. And like I said, the chief has stepped forward, and the city council has stepped forward, the mayor stepped forward. We just need to vote on this tonight. If we defer it to the 11th, our parade's on the 20th, we will not have enough time to really get this together and have a parade. We need signs printed, we need to get people in place for the parade, so we're asking you to vote on this tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Name and address, sir.
Matthew Davis, 61 Granada Drive, Kenner. I would just like to echo Mr. DeHaven and say thank you very much to the chief and to the council for having us tonight, and chief for helping us out with all the planning and safety issues that we had with the parade. I was in charge of the staging last year for the parade, and we did have a lot of congestion issues, specifically on the 3 streets that we use for staging areas. And we had people trying to drive from their homes back down the street while we were already staged and ready to begin the parade, as well as some areas along the parade route with congestion and where people with floats are actually having a hard time getting around the corners. And the parade is just getting larger and larger. Last year was the largest parade that we've had, and this year we expect it to be even larger. And it's just my fear that we're going to get into a situation at some point where even an emergency vehicle won't be able to get through because we're just going to have too many people and too much congestion in the area without this ordinance being passed. Thank you very much for your time, and have a great evening.
Thank you.
Council Chairman.
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor.
Just out of courtesy to Councilman Reno, he's not present, and this is going on with people from his district. You may want to ask him if he wants to hear some of this.
So, Tom, what would you ask him, please?
Just out of courtesy.
Mr. Taft, would you mind holding off a couple of seconds? Go ahead, Mr. Taft. You can start. Name and address.
Greg Tapp, 3720 West Loyola Drive. If I may, can I ask the police chief a couple questions? Would that be allowable?
Sure, go right ahead.
The last time I tried to ask somebody something, I was told I couldn't do that.
If it's relating to this particular...
It's related to it.
Okay.
What I want to know is, in Kenner right now, when there is an event, the police department is not told of the event and given the opportunity to assess the event and to give recommendations of what needs to be at an event to make sure it is safe?
No, I participate in the application process. I sign off on the special events permit.
So you're not involved in the planning or... In other words...
It depends on the event.
Because if I go to an event, I want to make sure that I don't get shot.
Well,
so the question is, based on what we're hearing around the country, and what we're seeing, with the crowds getting bigger and bigger, it looks, it would seem to me that the police department would be center of any planning so that they can make the recommendation or they can make the moves that will need to be made, and plus know how many men or women they would need to be out there and at what position.
That's correct. No, we participate in the planning of most of the events. The smaller events, one policeman may be there, but the large events, yes, we do.
So what does this legislation give you that you don't have already?
It gives me the authority to establish a temporary parking or traffic restriction.
But you can't do that today without this legislation?
No.
Personally, as a constituent with a family going to parades or even events, the first thing I want to make sure and foremost is that there's safety. And with everything that's going on, to me, the police department should be right in the middle of it regardless, because they know the streets, they know which areas are worse than others, and when you have a big crowd, you need some kind of crowd control. So if the police chief doesn't have it today, I think he should have it. And he should probably have more authority when these events take place because of the safety of the constituents. Thank you.
Thank you. Name and address, please.
Donna Reno, 42 Emile Avenue. I was the captain of the parade for 5 years. The officer that was in charge of traffic division would come to my house for several days and a couple of hours, and we had no issues as far as the police helping us or being able to get done whatever needed to be done because we planned ahead of time. And the parking issue and the parade route, I actually walked the route myself and put out ahead of time notes saying, please don't park at this day, at this time, blah, blah, blah. And then also asked for barricades in particular places, and I had no problem getting them put where they needed to be, and we had no problem whatsoever. And actually, the biggest parade was my first one, which was 62 units instead of 54, whatever they just said. So they do a lot, and they do know what they're doing. I'm not sure what the change is. Are we asking for signs or what? I don't understand the difference, because it worked out perfectly when I was doing it, and I did it for 5 years.
Well, yes, this legislation here is to temporarily restrict traffic flow. No parking, one-way streets, no left turn, no right turns. And Driftwood made it in here as a for instance, as a special event. So it's not just geared towards the Driftwood Parade. For example, if we have a special event and we want to keep the parking 50 feet from the entrance, we can put up temporary no parking restrictions to keep the automobiles away. So that's pretty much all this is designed to do, is to give the chief of police the authority to control traffic flow in and around a special event.
Okay, because you guys were doing that for me great already. That's why I didn't understand it. Thank you.
All it is the ability to hang signs and restrict traffic flow is all it is.
You guys did awesome. I didn't understand the change. Thanks.
Thank you, Chief. And just to be clear, this is a city, so we have our we, the city of Kenner, have the Martin Luther King Parade on the 15th. This applies to that also as it relates to everything discussed in the ordinance, correct? Okay. So motion by Councilman Segura.
Close 1 second, though.
Okay, Councilman Segura to close.
Okay, just to reiterate a little bit of the conversation, yes, throughout any parade, whether it be this part of the city, that part of the city, if the police come out and participate and put men on the corners, put barricades, in this case, if he does need to redirect traffic or put no parking signs, this legislation allows for the proper enforcement also of those signs that says if you're going the wrong way, you can be ticketed. If you're parked illegally, they can tow. Those are the nuts and bolts in the meat of what this is asking and allowing us to give the chief, not just go put a sign on a wall that says don't park here because there's a parade coming. If you park there and he sends a truck to go get it, he has the legal permission right to do though by us. So that's the follow-up to the conversations where this is needed. Thank you.
Thank you. No one else wants to speak? Motion by Councilman Segura, second by Councilwoman Haynes. Council, please vote.
Mr. Chairman, motion passes 6-0. Councilman Reyno did not vote. Item 13 is resolutions and motions by council members. Item 13A is a resolution appointing a council president effective January 1st, 2018.
Motion by Councilman Segura for Councilman Wilmot, second by Councilman Carroll. Okay. Councilman DeFranchis, you have the floor.
Actually, I asked initially, I'd like to defer this. I'd like to have a deferral of 13A, and the reason is very simple. You know, in the past, this council has always had a policy of talking to each other, and every councilman who wanted to be president or vice president would individually go to the various council people and talk about it and say, you know, I'm looking forward to being council president, I would like your support. This didn't happen. I talked to many council people up here. No one spoke to them. Many of them heard about it from, you know, someone else, or maybe they ran into them at a function. That policy that we had was so we could work together. And when we have something on the agenda where no one even thought it was courteous to go to speak to the other council members and ask for support, I find that troubling. And so I would like to have it deferred for one meeting. It is not a major problem. Let me explain why. In the past, it was never done in December. In the past, until Councilman Conley was elected at large, we always did it at the first January meeting. At that point, we would change the agenda items and move 13A to the beginning of the meeting. We would then vote on it, and whoever was elected would then take over the meeting. Now, when Councilman Conley was here, there was a suggestion made because some believed it would be smoother to do it at the December meeting, and it was moved to the December meeting. So it is not as if this is something that had to be done this way. And it was simply done for convenience. There is no convenience when no one has spoken to each other. I really believe it was not handled the way it needed to be handled, and so I'm asking for one meeting deferral. At that meeting again, whoever's elected council president will be able to take over at that meeting. It is not in any way anything negative against anyone here. In fact, I will tell you that I had approached Councilman Wilmot at the last meeting about being council president. So again, I don't want it to be a negative for anyone. However, I do think that we should try to work together and talk to each other instead of just happening to mention at a council meeting, oh, I think so-and-so will be council president. That's not how it's supposed to work. Cooperation is important. Talking to each other is important, and it's not happening. So I would like to move for a one-meeting deferral for 13A.
So there's a motion on the floor by Councilwoman DeFranchis, second by Councilman Reno for a one-meeting deferral. Council, please vote.
Two more votes, please.
Okay, there you go.
One more? Mr. Chairman, motion fails. 5-2. Councilmember DeFranchis and Reno, Councilmember, yes. Motion fails 2-5. Councilmembers Hand, Klein, Wilmot, Carroll, and Segura are opposed.
So on the legislation, motion by Councilman Segura, second by Councilman Carroll, to appoint Councilman Wilmot as the next council president. Council, please vote.
Mr. Chairman, motion passes 7-0. Item 13B is a resolution appointing a council vice president effective January 1st, 2018.
Is there anyone who would like to speak on this legislation?
If I could get a motion and a second to put it on the floor.
Motion by Councilman Carroll, second by Councilman Wilmot.
Is there a name that we're going to?
For vice president,
Yes. What's the name that you're going to nominate?
Councilman Segura.
Thank you. Okay. Councilman Wilmot, you would like to speak? Okay. Councilman DeFranchis, would you like to speak?
I belabor the point, but my same argument applies. We didn't have any idea, most of us, who was even going to be mentioned for council vice president. How sad is that? That we simply have to have our council president mention who that person is and then vote on it. No discussion, no asking for our support. This is not the way we should be acting. This is not the way we should be working together. Therefore, I am asking, although I know that I'm not going to get it, I'm still asking for a deferral on appointing a council vice president until the January meeting. I'm asking for a one-meeting deferral.
Motion by Councilwoman DeFranchis, second by Councilman Reno for a one-meeting deferral. Council, please vote.
Mr. Chairman, motion fails 2-5. Councilmembers Hand, Klein, Wilmot, Carroll, and Segura are opposed. Back to your original motion.
And before we vote, I'd like to just say that, based on some of the comments that Councilwoman DeFranchis said, some of them were valid, but I would just like to say that since my tenure here on the council, there aren't any rules per se. There aren't any rules by law that how we do it or when we do it, because quite frankly, it has been done many of ways since my tenure here on the council. So I don't want it to seem as though we broke a law, because we didn't. It was a different process, and as Councilwoman can attest to, there have been things initiated and then things that have been taken back also. So I just want to be clear, there were no laws or rules broken. The process that she says makes sense. There may have been some more communication other times and less this times, but there were not any rules broken, and those are only my 2 cents as it relates to that. Councilman Reno, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. On this particular item, I had spoken on the previous item with Councilman Wilmot, who asked if I could have his vote for council president. Nobody has approached me on vice president, so I'm just letting you know right now, the reason I'm voting no is because I wasn't approached by anybody. I've been on this council since 2012, and you know, every time when it came up for a vote for a president and a vice president of the council, whoever wanted that seat picked up the phone and called every council member and asked. I wasn't asked, and I'm not going to be asked right now on the spot. So the bottom line is I'm voting no, and I'm explaining why I'm voting no. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilman. So on the resolution, Councilman Wilmot, you have the floor.
Thank you. And I also wanted to make a comment, too. I mean, from what I understand, Mr. President, you, yourself, and myself have been appointed, you prospectively as the president, me as the vice president currently, and that's through December 31st of 2017. The next office is to be held, commence at the next meeting, which is January 11th, 2018, or maybe even January 1st, 2018, if I'm not correct. In any event, we don't want to leave a gap to having a council president and vice president. And by doing a deferral, we would, in fact, have a gap. So this ensures that we do not have a gap by having it tonight. So that's procedurally, that's my comment, and that's what I believe is accurate. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. So on the resolution, motion by Councilman Carroll, second by Councilman Wilmot to nominate Councilman Segura for vice president. Council, please vote.
Mr. Chairman, motion passes 5-2. Councilmember DeFranchis and Reyno are opposed. Item 13C is a resolution authorizing the mayor to make application to the Louisiana Department of Environmental Quality Municipal Facilities Revolving Fund Loan Program for a loan to finance improvements to the wastewater collection, treatment, and disposal system of the city of Kenner in order to complete work pursuant to a compliance order, which loan will be represented by bonds to be issued by the city of Kenner and sold to the Department of Environmental Quality, appointing the Becknell Law Firm, APLC, as bond counsel and other matters in connection therewith.
Motion by Councilman Wilmot, second by Councilman Segura. Council, please vote.
Mr. Chairman, motion passes 7-0. Item 14 is items removed from the consent agenda. We have none. Item 15 is acceptance of contracts and similar matters approved by the mayor. Item 15A is summary ordinance number 12,321, an ordinance accepting the lowest responsive bid received from Walter J. Barnes Electric Company, Incorporated, received November 8, 2017, by the Louisiana Department of Transportation and Development in the amount of $619,293 for the Veterans Boulevard Lighting, Airport to Loyola, State Project Number H.010973, Kenner Public Works Project Number 2014-008-SL for the Department of Public Works.
Excuse me, Ms. Fauché, could someone explain the logistics of the area that this legislation pertains to, just so the public will know? We know it's Loyola, but to give an idea, if the Public Works person or someone can give a description.
Mr. Chairman, if I could get a motion and second on the floor, and then we could proceed with your discussion, please.
Okay. Motion by Councilman Carroll, second by Councilman Hain.
Thank you, sir. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, can I get your question?
Yes, sir. This legislation addresses the project that's going to be going on for Loyola. Loyola is a long street. If you could just give us maybe a little bit more logistical, what area we're talking about. This isn't. I think it's the area that Councilwoman Hain and myself shares. But just for clarity, we want to make sure what we are talking about.
This is a lighting project for veterans between Loyola and Williams.
Between Loyola and Williams, along Veterans?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay, starting at Loyola, going all the way to?
All the way to Veterans.
All the way to Williams. Okay, thank you. So motion by Councilman Carroll, second by Councilwoman Hayden. Council, please vote.
Mr. Chairman, motion passes 7-0. Item 15B is summary ordinance number 12,322. An ordinance approving an engineering amendment number 2 with Linfield, Hunter, and Junius Incorporated for the wastewater treatment plant number 3 improvements project to increase the construction phase fee by $14,420 for additional construction and administrative services for the Department of Public Works.
Motion by Councilman Wilmot, second by Councilwoman DeFranchis. Council, please vote.
Chairman, motion passes 7-0. Item 15C is summary ordinance number 12,323. An ordinance accepting the responsive base bid received from Industrial and Mechanical Contractors Incorporated in the amount of $150,360 for the 10th and Maria Pump Station Pump Replacement Project in accordance with seal bid number 17-6409 for the Department of Public Works.
Motion by Councilman Segura, second by Councilman Reno. Council, please vote.
Mr. Chairman, motion passes 7-0. Item 16 is ordinances and resolutions in summary for first reading. Item 16A is an ordinance authorizing the purchase of Lot 14A, 1415-16 Square 9, Beachview Heights, Kenner, Jefferson Parish, Louisiana. Item 16B is an ordinance approving supplemental agreement number 1 to the agreement with Richard E. Lambert Consultants, LLC, for the construction, engineering, and inspection-related services for the New Orleans Airport Connector Road, State Project Number H.011276, and H.011794, Federal Aid Project Number H.011276 and H.011794, Kenner Public Works Project Number 2014-003 ARB for the Department of Public Works. Item 16C is an ordinance accepting the responsive bid received from Barrier Construction Company, LLC, in the amount of $376,180 for the reconstruction of Hollanday Street, Airline Drive to the railroad tracks, City of Kenner Project Number 2016-003-RB, in accordance with seal bid number 17-6410 for the Department of Public Works. Item 16D is an ordinance authorizing the utilization of state contract number 4400008219 to purchase various types of ammunition from Barney's Incorporated, Barney's Police Supplies on an as-needed basis not to exceed $30,000 per year for the Kenner Police Department. Item 17 is reports from the council and our special committees. Anybody want to address tonight?
Councilman Reno, you have the floor.
Reno? You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to take this opportunity to wish everybody a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. We won't see anybody until council meeting of the new year. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Councilwoman DeFranchis. Okay. Anyone? Councilman Klein, you have the floor.
I want to wish everyone, all the citizens of Kenner, all the councilmen, the mayor's office, all the department heads, all the employees of the city of Kenner, as well as my family and my friends and my clients, to have a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. And please, please be safe. If you're going to drink, don't drive anywhere, much less in the city of Kenner. So everybody, be safe for the holidays and eat and drink and have a good time. Thank you.
Councilman Wilmot.
Thank you. And I just want to address an issue that came up a few minutes ago regarding the selection of the president and vice president of the council. And first off, I'm very honored to be going into 2018 as the council president. So, and I want to also mention that Councilman Carroll has done a fantastic job as the president of serving the council, and thank you, sir, for your service, of course, as president. But I would like to mention that I've been serving the last 6 months as the vice president, and doing so, I looked upon that as being the next in line to be the president. So I didn't actually contact my colleagues, and I might be wrong for doing so. But I think that that's the reason why a lot of people didn't get phone calls. I just thought it was kind of the gradual process, if you will. So it's my fault for not doing so. I apologize if I offended anybody by not doing so. But then again, at the same time, I thought it was a natural progression, and it only makes sense. And I look forward to doing it, and I hope I will be doing the best job possible. So thank you, and Happy New Year, and Merry Christmas to everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. And I'd like to thank you for your kind words and thank all the council members for the support for the past 6 months. It's just not a one-person council president, it's the entire council. Without your guys' support, without the clerk of court, without the administration, none of this would be ran as smoothly as it can be. That being said, I'd like to take this opportunity to publicly apologize to Councilman Klein and Councilwoman Hain for my procedures that I messed up. You know, I did not give them an opportunity to present something on the council floor, and that was my fault. Attorney Russo was screaming at me, pointing at me, throwing me signs, and I just totally ignored her. So I would like to, and hope you can accept my apology for that. If anything that I can do so we can fix that going forward, I will definitely be support. But again, I'd like to apologize to Councilman Klein and to Councilwoman Hain for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I'll keep your words in mind next time this comes up. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
I accept your apology.
Councilman Segura?
Yes, just
Yes,
real
sir.
quick. Again, know others have said Merry Christmas, Happy New Year to everyone. But I would also encourage you to tune in to K76 and YouTube, where you will hopefully see some individual greetings and some group greetings for y'all also on those medias. I hope everyone got the opportunity to film greetings, but I know quite a few of us did, if not all. So you might find that entertaining, and please go out and look at that and see. I know the administration had a good time with theirs. So thank y'all. See y'all next year.
Thank you.
Councilman DeFrances, you have the floor.
Thank you so much. I thought we were all going to do it as a group, which we've done for so many years, but since it looks like we may not be doing so, I did want to also wish everyone a Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. You know, we have some of the best people that work for the city of Kenner, and we have the best citizens in the city of Kenner. We all work together. We have a police chief who does a wonderful job. We have an administration that works hard, and we have a council that truly does try to work hard as well. It's only when we work together, which I have pointed out more times than I can count, that we all move forward. And we hope that this blessed season of Christmas, a time of hope and joy and love, hopefully that is, and peace, is something that we will carry forward, not only through this Christmas season, but through the new year. So I wish everyone in this city a wonderful, wonderful Merry Christmas and an absolutely blessed and wonderful new year. And I wish you all well. Thank you.
Councilman Hand.
Thank you. I, too, would just like to thank the council and administrators for welcoming me so warmly. And it's been a very interesting, exciting end of 2017, and I am looking forward to being with everyone in 2018. And I'd like to wish you all a very Merry Christmas as well, and the city, the people of Kenner. I'm very proud to be part of this city, especially experiencing what I have this last month. So I'm looking forward to seeing you in 2018. Happy New Year. Thank you.
That's it, sir. Item 18 is new business. We have none. Item 19 is unfinished business and motions to reconsider or remove from a tabled position. Have none. Item 20 is persons wishing to address the council on special subject matters.
We have a few. Mr. Greg Tiff. Thank you, sir. Mr. John DeHaven. Mr. Edward J. Howner. Okay. Mr. Matthew Dads. Davis. Okay. Mr. Richard Brown. Thank you, Mr. Brown. Pastor Jackie Brown Crockerham. Name and address, please.
Pastor Jacqueline Brown, Cockerham, 2610 Decatur Street, Apartment A, Kenner, Louisiana. The first thing that I would like to do is to extend apology to our attorney, Leah Roussel, and Mr. Rappner. There were some misunderstandings between us, and because of the ambiguities that were involved, I did some checking, and I want to say thank you for trying to explain to me, but I'm satisfied, and I apologize for the little rough edges that we shared. The other thing that I would like to do is to share with you all that there is a support the proposal for a new Washington Elementary School that's coming up. So for all of the citizens of Kenner, we would like to say to join us on January 10th, 2018 at Washington School Cafeteria, that's 606 Clay Street. We will have the members of Jefferson Parish School Board coming in, and this is the statement that I need to read to you. The community meeting is sponsored by the Jefferson Parish School Board concerning the need for building a new school on the Washington Elementary site and the adjacent area. The community's input is crucial to the progression of this project. Please help us to build a brighter future and a new school for our beloved Washington Elementary. This comes from Friends of Washington, and it will be at 6 p.m. until 7 p.m. on January 10th, 2018. And in closing, I'd like to say to have a blessed holiday, be safe, and caring for others and their families. You have a good night.
Thank you.
Oh, one other thing, may I? I'm sorry. To the council, apologize. The airport expansion project, will you please check with Mr. Charlie to see about that covering for the protective area? The fence, the orange fencing has come down practically. There's still an incomplete area, and it still looks bad. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ms. Faucher, you...
As I saw Ms. Brown walking away, I'll push my request to speak because I was going to say I have an update on the wall for you. And Tom Schreiner may also be able to add to that. But we're working with the contractor to get them to move. One of the problems, as you know, is that the page fence is in one location and the sound barrier is right up against it. We're trying to get them on the other side. I think that'll make it both less unsightly and also safer for the kids. And then we're also going to look at a black, like, construction material to be able to at least, fabric to put around it, so at least it will look a little bit better. So anyway, they're working with him right now, so just want to give you a heads up on that. Thank you. We'll keep you posted.
I believe Councilman Hand wants to speak as well.
Okay. Councilwoman Hand.
Thank you. I'll just be brief. I would like to give a word of praise to our fire department and fire chief. They had a fire in District 5 a couple of weeks ago on Verde Street, and the owners of the home called me, and they were just very grateful because the fire department arrived so quickly, and they contained the fire in a little pantry area, and their home was spared, and everybody was safe. There was one of the children inside the home. So I just wanted to say thank you for our fire department for responding so quickly, and they did a wonderful job, and I just spotted the chief back there, so I wanted to say thank you very much. We appreciate what you do.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Chris Willard. Thank you, sir. Ms. Donna Reno. Name and address, please.
42 Emile Avenue. I'm here to discuss, last weekend, the last meeting when we discussed the Hispanic Resource Center, I came up and I spoke and I said that there were mounds of dirt put in the park to prevent the Mexicans, as it was said at the time, from playing soccer. And the mayor told me he never did that, that I was wrong. So he was pretty much calling me a liar again. These are your words, and I'm quoting you. A barrier or fence was put behind an open lot which allowed unwanted traffic flow through from Martinique. I also replaced the park sign, and the new benches are on the way. Soon, security cameras will be added, and new playground equipment will come later this year after cameras installations. Security cameras, by my request, are being bid on currently for all pocket parks and Galatas Playground. I feel in the pocket parks there has been too many issues throughout the district with some undesirable elements which sometimes lead to criminal activity, hindering families from using the parks for the good, clean recreational activities. In March of 2009, you said new green vinyl fencing was replaced, all old fencing, all the District 3 pocket parks, including North Kenner Recreational Park, with the addition of new concrete benches that will prove more weather resistant. Long-awaited security cameras will be installed soon, provided more security, and playground equipment will be here shortly. However, I would like to meet soon with y'all to discuss the concerns of the North Kenner Recreational Parks patrons. In October of '09, you said, in closing, I believe North Kenner Recreational Park has become more of a passive park since I had ordered mounds of soil delivered and placed. The mounds will be rounded soon, and seeds will be planted to make the mounds more accommodating to all who wish to use the park for what was intended. I'm sure the park has become more occupied by Kenner residents since I made the decision. Hope you're enjoying it and will continue to do so. Then we got one particular topic, at a council meeting discussion, and the possibility or the portion of North Kenner Park and North Kenner Park to be a dog park. The input from
30 seconds, Ms. Reno.
Okay, the input of the attendance was positive and very welcoming to propose. The mayor and I have chosen the proportion of North Kenner since it was a perfect for such a popular development. Funding development of the dog park in North Kenner was recently approved by FEMA and approximately $250,000. We feel will be construction of the dog park. This will resolve the issues that have plagued this area and would qualify the quality of life of dog owners in the area, which never came to fruition. But again, that's another lie.
Ms. Reno, your time is up, Ms. Reno.
A written and public apology.
Thank you.
Can I?
Mayor Zahn, you have the floor.
Yeah. First of all, I appreciate the research that she did, because that is some good writing that was done back in District 3 when I was representing only District 3. I do believe what my comment was when Ms. Reno did lie, she said something about Miguez Park. That was something that was done in District 4. Now, if I misunderstood that, that's between her and I, but I think she used the term Miguez Park as she was walking away. So I said that was a lie. Well, you did 2 weeks ago. But
Ms. Reno, could you please, the mayor didn't interrupt you when you were speaking. Please don't interrupt him.
But the mounds were, if she had been talking about North Kenner Park, I wouldn't have called her a liar. I would have said, you're correct, and I'm proud of what I did then, and I'm still proud of it. And I think the residents of Driftwood, especially those that live on Martinique between Driftwood Boulevard and the dead end, Vintage, are happy with that. The undesirables that I'm referring to are not Mexicans that she said. I'm just saying you said Mexicans. Can I have the floor?
Please, could you just...
Thank you. But I'm just responding, Council Chairman. Look, I hate going through this also, but the misperceptions and the lies just continue. When I said the undesirable element, there had been a tournament there that was not authorized by the City of Kenner back in 2007, 2008, One individual almost lost their arm to a machete fight. That is an undesirable. If people bring a machete to a soccer tournament that's not authorized by the city of Kenner and is not patrolled or detailed by the Kenner Police Department, yes, they're undesirables in the city of Kenner as far as I'm concerned. It's people that shouldn't be doing things around children and having a festival that's unauthorized. So I stand by what I did. The people of Driftwood reached out to me, especially on Martinique in that area, and said, could you please make this a passive park? Can you make it so that our kids can roll down the hills? Can you make it so that our dogs can run up and down and we can have it as a walking track like it's supposed to be? I did what my constituents asked for. I gave them a passive park. I stand by it then. I think Councilwoman DeFrancis did the same thing in Miguel's Park because I don't think she had a machete fight, thank God, but she did probably have some undesirables that were doing things that they shouldn't be doing, and she asked her constituents asked her at the time, and she did the same thing. This was not an isolated incident in District 3. We stand by what we did. I'm not lying now. I didn't lie back then. I'm telling you, I do appreciate the research because, like I said, it's pretty good. It was all in the Driftwood Park, I'm assuming. And we stand by what we did. I stand by what I did. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Is there anyone else? Think that's it? Motion to close. Second.
There's something that scans the back.